Hi, lovely listeners. The Big Interview was fortunate enough to be in the grand leather-clad dungeons of the Hotel du Vin in Harrogate approximately 12 hours after Adrian made a howler for Liverpool against Atleti to go out of the European Cup. Unfortunately, our guest today, Paul Robinson, who analyses what's going through a keeper's fevered mind when he kicks the ball straight to an opponent instead of making an obvious pass or lumping it out of the stadium. Listen on to try and understand the life of a lonely goalkeeper. Paul Robinson is funny, articulate. He's part of a family that is extremely sports talented. And he shared his time with the Big Interview because he's loved listening to our work, and you're going to enjoy hearing this characterful, forthright, very intelligent new friend of the Big Interview telling you about his life, starting with the maddest man in football, John Budgie Burridge, and how he saw Tony Yeboah's thunder blaster for Leeds going into the net at Ellen Road. Here comes Paul. The Big Interview's back. Paul, welcome to the Big Interview. We've just been talking off camera about our socio, Tom Lee, who persuaded both of us to meet. So I want to say right now, thanks, Tom. Fantastic. Nice to meet you.
And you, thank you for having me.
This is surroundings that you know very well. We're down in the Snog, aren't we?
The Hotel du Vin in Harrogate, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a regular meeting place for me and the rest of my family.
I'll tell you what.
Use it quite often.
When I moved
Christmas.
to Harrogate, I think I might be jockeying with you for the Christmas Day booking. It's sensational. And we could have met up last night, it turns out, but we didn't because I was too shy to phone you for a pint.
Yeah.
But we were doing the same thing. We were watching the Champions League, a competition which has to be close to your heart because of how you began in it, and we'll come to that later. But analytically, watching Liverpool go out to an Atleti side which, in my view, played as alert and as snappishly and with as much concentration as they have all season. But in my view, they were going to be well beaten. And at 2-0, it looked like Liverpool would either hold or add, and then the world falls apart. Now, you must look at what Adrian did for Atleti's first goal, and analytically, you must have strong views on it. For an idiot like me, who's never kept goal, and who's lived in Spain, where they're always coaching you about having a look before the ball comes to you in any passing situation, not just goalkeepers, and also the gift of peripheral vision. What do you imagine was going through Adrian's head, hypothetically, or when you look at that, what do you see when a goalkeeper doesn't look left and Milner's available? Neither does he lump it out of the ground, which was an option, and the ball goes straight to an opponent. When you're watching that, what emotions are you feeling? And analytically, how do you sort of break down what happened there?
You can see he was caught in about three different minds. He's a goalkeeper at the moment who's playing with a massive lack of confidence. You see him in the Premier League the way he is. He's been beaten by shots that he should have saved. There's a lot of balls that come off him, as you saw again last night, in and around his body. He's not comfortable with his hands. He's blocking stuff. He's not getting it out of the box. He made a double save last night, but the first save, he should have dealt with it a lot better. He should have held it, made a decent recovery with it. But as you say, the kick, he's not confident. He's been told to play out from the back. He's not Alisson. He can't play out from the back as well as Alisson can. It's not something that Adrian's done throughout his career. He's never been asked to do it in a team like Liverpool. When he came in first time for Alisson, I thought he did okay. I thought he did reasonably well. But he's playing in a team that was playing very well. They were keeping clean sheets. They were winning games. Now all of a sudden he's come back in. The team's hit a little bit of not a blip, but in their season, they're not winning games. They're first time they're struggling to get results. They're letting goals in. And he's been questioned. And you can see that was on his mind last night. Teams are seeing that. They're hitting shots from distance. They're testing him. And they're making it as like a weak point, if you like, and trying to exploit that. But last night when the ball came back to him, you could see he wanted to play because that's what he's been told to play. But at the same time, you could see that he couldn't pick a pass. And he wanted to get rid of it. He wanted to kick it down the field. But in the back of his mind, the manager told him not to do that. So he's caught between two minds, and in the end he ends up doing nothing. But then he gets back in position, which he's not in he's not in a bad position for the shot.
Yeah.
He's a couple of yards off his line, but then just as he's about to hit the shot, he jumps off the ground. You see him, you look at the replay, he's about that far off the ground. So
should we stop there so that people who've watched it but have never kept goal, or thought about goalkeeping, one, why is that bad? Two, once he'd got himself recovered and he knows the ball's coming back at him, what should he be doing?
Well, it should be his feet in contact with the ground. Listen, I've done it as a goalkeeper as well, and you watch other goalkeepers in the Premier League doing it now. It's a natural, to get yourself set, you kind of had a little jump, but some goalkeepers have a tendency to jump higher than others. And Adrian last night, when he went to set, he was about that far off the ground. So when the ball struck that far off the ground,
you're not moving, are you?
The way that the ball travels now, it's 15 yards closer to him. You look at it and it went two yards into the corner of the goal, like into the middle of the goal, and you think, he's got to save that. But when you actually look at it, he didn't give himself a chance of saving it because his feet weren't in contact with the ground. He couldn't move towards the ball.
Is it a nervous thing? Is it like a tick?
Sometimes, yeah, as goalkeepers do. Yeah, you've got a set position that you want to get into. His position off his line, cut 2-3 yards off his line, he recovered to a good position.
Yeah.
No, but then he went to set himself, and with his feet not in contact with the ground, he couldn't get there. And I think he was beaten, to be fair, in all 3 goals last night. I think he could have done better with them all. I think the second one was pretty much the same, with his feet off the ground. And then the third one was strange. I've watched it a couple of times, and it kind of goes through him in a one-on-one. I think the difference between the two teams last night, if it was a boxing match, it'd have been stopped by a long way because Liverpool were outstanding. You
agree with that? I thought that it was more than, in terms of pound for pound, it was more than a 2-0 margin.
Oh, Liverpool, first half should have been. But I thought Oblak was outstanding. I think he's a brilliant goalkeeper. I think he's a top-class goalkeeper. And as I say, if it was a boxing match, Liverpool would have won it. They'd stopped it. But the real difference between the two teams was Oblak and Adrian, the two goalkeepers. If Alisson was in goal for Liverpool last night, I genuinely believe they wouldn't have lost that game.
And, did you see what I saw? So you've talked about Adrian having a split mind about what he'd like to do, what he thinks he should be doing, also the noise, the pressure in your head. Milner, as the ball is beginning to come towards Adrian from the pass back, Milner's putting himself in position, so it's easier for an outfield player. He's read it. I struggle to understand, but there'll be a reason, whether it's just crowd noise or adrenaline, but he didn't take a look left, because if he even thought, well, I should be playing it, you just take it onto your right, a quarter turn, off it goes to Milner, and away they go. And effectively, I think at that moment, you pass to Milner and Liverpool are in the next round.
It's a goalkeeper that's lacking in confidence. Clearly not playing as well as he should be, or wanting to be playing.
Which gives you muddled thoughts.
And straight away you're thinking he's trying to do things that he maybe shouldn't be doing, or he just gets caught in two minds. And you feel for him, because when you're in that situation, it doesn't go right. If you do that, 9 times out of 10, it goes to one of your players, you get away with it. When you're, for want of a better phrase, when you're having one, it goes to one of their players and they stick it in the corner. And then it snowballs from there. But as you say, if it was Alisson in goal, he gets it, opens himself out to James Milner. And I think if that first one wouldn't have gone in, the other two probably wouldn't have done either. No.
When you're beginning, because we've talked about, we were grimacing last night watching the football where there was a pass across the penalty area. Now, I'm significantly older than you, but that was like foreboding. School teachers and coaches would have put you in the jail if you passed across the penalty area.
Passing in the penalty, but even now the rules have changed, so you can pass it in the penalty area as a goalkeeper.
So what was life like as a young goalkeeper? What was the differences then, thinking, well, I've got talent, people like me, I'm going to be a goalkeeper? From then to now, what were the things that were going on then that are unrecognisable now?
I just used to love playing football. I used to be a decent outfield player as well. I used to play in goal for the sixth form at school when I went to secondary school. In my first year at secondary school as a year 7, I'd play in goal for the sixth form, and I'd play outfield for my own age. And I always used to laugh, there was only one thing that stopped me from being a centre forward, and it was about 2.5 stone at the time.
What you had to put on to be I think we all know that's what.
But no, it got to the point of where it was a stick to what you're good at, and goalkeeping was always something that I enjoyed. But as you say, it's changed so much unrecognisably over the years, as the game has as well. It was a job of catching crosses, saving shots, and then kicking the ball down the pitch as far as you can.
As far as you possibly can.
And jumping forward a little bit. When I went to Leeds as an apprentice at 16, I was 3rd of 3 when I left school to go as an apprentice. And an opportunity came with John Burridge, who was my goalie coach at the time. How long have you got? There's a bundle of stories on
I worked with Budgie.
But anyway, Budgie took me on loan. He said, "You're soft as shit, you need toughening up." He took me to Durham City on loan in the Northern League. I had to go and live with Budgie and his missus for 3 months. And he toughened me up by taking me to Durham City, and they loved me because I could kick it the length of the pitch.
How many sit-ups did he make you do per day?
Mate, I tell you a story about when we used to go to Newcastle's training ground, and he used to train at university. And I think at the time he was banned from the training ground. So he'd have me up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, running through Durham City, set a bag of balls on his back, jumping over the fence in the corner, running over the canal at the back, training on one of the back pitches before anyone else would get in and see him, and then going back to his house.
Let's tell people who this is. This is John Budgie Burridge.
Yeah.
He was part of that team. He was part of Crystal Palace. He's played for just about every club in Britain, including my own beloved Aberdeen.
Goalkeeper at Man City, wasn't he? Something like that.
And as he rightly says, there was a stage where he was very, very good indeed. He was a really good goalkeeper.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember him when he was young, fearless,
Yeah.
you know, one of this breed of smaller goalkeepers,
Yeah.
but flying about his goal.
Passionate, absolutely obsessed with his
Relatively
profession.
confident.
Yeah, you could say that. He wasn't shy, let's put it that way.
But like to this day, like I was at the Classical the other week, commentating with Simon Hanley, Michael Laudrup by our side, and as part of our team, the Facebook group was Kev Campbell, Tim Lee, and co-commentator as well was Budgie, and Budgie was at the Classical in his goalkeeping.
He gets places that water couldn't get, mate, honestly. What was Budgie doing there?
He's commentating on the game for Facebook in the Middle East region. He wears his goalie gloves all the time still now.
Honestly, mate, nice guy, wrong planet. He is honestly, he's wired to the moon. He is brilliant. He is.
I don't think he'd deny that either.
No, he wouldn't. He'd tell you exactly the same. I mean, he used to come to Leeds and coach us as kids, and he used to turn up, I mean, car boots full of like gear and sell all the t-shirts and stuff at the back of his car. The gaffer at the time said, "Budgie, you can't do that. You're going to have to stop doing that." He was just...
Well, now, for the people that don't believe me, when I was best man and my best mate, and the stag was in Hexham, so we went to Hexham races,
Yeah.
and we're staying at Slaley Hall. And on the Saturday at Hexham races, I wouldn't call it the grandstand, but there's a sort of bar in at Hexham. I love Hexham, so I'm not knocking it. There's a sort of grandstand, and up on the roof, there's this sort of figure in a long Crocodile Dundee leather coat, a mad Crocodile Dundee hat, snakeskin cowboy boots, and he's up there, and it's a good height. And why he's gone up there, I don't know, but he's just won the league with Blythe Spartans. I think as player manager.
Yeah.
And he's threatening to jump off. His players have bet him that he won't jump off the grandstand. Really, to this day, I think he tried to lift his coat out
to get some wings and air under his wings.
like
Honestly, that doesn't surprise me with him. With some of the stories that we had with him, he was honestly...
And you get to live with him.
His heart is so genuine.
Yeah.
He's just so passionate about football. You'll read stories about him, you know, having fruit thrown around the room to catch fruit, and his missus throwing stuff around. And everything you read about him that you think, God, that can't be true, is 100% true.
And more.
He's as mad as a box of frogs, but he is one of the nicest, most genuine people, passionate people, and he helped me so much in my career.
Did he change your perception or ability or attitude?
Attitude. He made me grow up quickly as a man. I left home at 16 to be an apprentice for £37 a week to live in digs. We were the first lot that lived on the training ground at Leeds with these new state-of-the-art training grounds. And then all of a sudden you're training with the first team because you're a goalkeeper. There's a small number, so you get put in with the first team goalie coach, and that was a baptism of fire straight away with Budgie. These sessions were sharp, lively, hard. You could not have a day off with him.
No.
We'd start an hour and a half before everybody else in the gym playing head tennis. He'd be sweating like a bull mastiff before it even gone out. Going up for headers at the head tennis net, it'd be like sticking elbows on me, the other kids, and the competitiveness and the passion and the will to win.
That's something
and
that's good to learn, isn't it?
It was so infectious, It's so old school, and it's probably half of the stuff that Budgie used to do you wouldn't get away with in the modern world now.
Yeah.
But it was just such a good grounding.
And so you were born locally, so when you get that first clutch of talented boys living at the training ground more or less, that has to feel at that stage already like a dream come true.
It was strange. It was odd leaving home at that age.
Where was home? Beverley?
Beverley. I was born in Beverley, yeah.
Which, for those who don't know, there's an lovely racecourse there too.
Yeah, East Yorkshire.
It's within, touching distance of where you had to move to.
45 minutes, an hour to Leeds.
Yeah.
My dad used to take me 3 nights a week to train, or 2 nights a week to train it at the training ground. And then obviously the time came to be whether you were going to be an apprentice or not. We had a successful youth team. up from like 14s, 15s, 16s. And then the time came, one of the nights at training, you went in for a meeting with your parents. And if you basically, it was a yes or a no as to whether you were going to be offered an apprenticeship with the promise of a pro, or a 1 year apprenticeship, because you can only sign a pro when you're 17. Yeah. So it was either a 1 year apprenticeship and 2 year pro, or a 2 year apprenticeship and a year pro. And the lads that came out with the tracksuit under their arm were the lads that were in. The lads that came out without weren't. Unfortunately, I was one of the ones that did.
Was it an intoxicating feeling? Did Leeds matter to you as a club?
Yeah, because I was there for so long.
But as you're growing up, I mean, what's your first experience of Ellen Road? Who are the players you remember? What was happening at the club? Before you know that you're a talented footballer, are Leeds United a big deal in your life?
I remember ball boying, because I used to go and watch Hull City as a kid. My granddad used to take me to watch Hull City. And it's at the time, Grimsby Town were in a higher league. I think they were in, it was Division 1 or 2 at the time. So the weeks that Hull City were away, we'd maybe go and watch Grimsby. Leeds were always the top team, but they were just that little bit too far out the area and we never got to go there. But when I joined the academy there, we could be ball boy for all the home games. So as a kid, you got to watch, the likes of Gary McAllister, Gordon Strachan, John Lukic was the goalkeeper at that time. And as it progressed and the team got better under Howard Wilkinson, the likes of Tony Yeboah came in, and I was ball boy for that game. The Liverpool game, the volley. If you watch that game very, very closely, as he hits the volley, there's some spotty little adolescent kid in a very, very pastel blue top with great big yellow lapels by the side of the goal who does that.
Having shouted, shoot!
And that's me. And the irony is, it's David James that was in goal, who I went on to take his England place. And I was sat ball boying behind the goal for that Tony Yeboah goal.
We've done one of these interviews with James Milner, who was ball boy, I think probably the night of the Barcelona game,
Right.
At any rate, he was a ball boy. Nowadays, ball boys are the sort of 12th man.
Yeah.
Because what you see is, it's like a basketball court.
Well, you look at Liverpool last night as well. You saw the way that the ball boys, when they were chasing the game, all of a sudden the ball boys got ammunition supplied to them. As soon as the ball went out, it was back in. But there, when I was ball boy, it was just a case of crouch behind the hoardings and just get the ball back if it comes to you.
No instructions, nothing fly.
Oh yeah, I mean if they were 1-0 up with 5 minutes to go, the manager would come out and tell the youth team coach, he'd drag him down, and the youth team coach, you could see him walking around the pitch and knew what was coming. Just slow down a bit, lads.
Lose the ball. Lose the ball.
If that ball comes near you, do not get up. Just let it go.
And with the first time you ball boy, does it feel pressurised? Do you feel the eyes in the back of your head when you're sitting with the crowd behind you?
It's the first time you really get to be amongst the crowd. It's the first time you're actually down there. Okay, you go and watch football, you've seen a lot of football, but it's the first time you actually think, whoa, this is what the players feel like, this is what it's like to be at this level. And I don't know whether it's consciously or subconsciously that they do that with the academy boys, because my boy's in the academy at Leeds now, and they do exactly the same. And he absolutely loves going on a Saturday or a Wednesday, whenever it is, to ball boy for the first team. And whether it's just to give the lads a little bit of a taste or just a bit of an experience. But when you're there, I mean, you learn so many new words as well. He's come back, the first few times that he's come back, Dad, what's this?
What, Czech or Italian or Portuguese?
Yeah, all that kind of
old-fashioned Anglo-Saxon.
Very, very old-fashioned Anglo-Saxon from the cop at the end. Because he's a goalkeeper as well, he gets put behind the goals, so he gets to hear all the choice words. Dad, I heard this today. Can I say it? I said, well, say it quick and I'll let you know. So no, it's good, but as I said,
proper education.
That's the time as a kid you get your first real taste of it.
Do you get a couple of quid in a Mars bar, or what's the story?
I think you used to get a Mars bar at half time, or a bag of crisps or something, and a hot drink. But it was just, I think your parents got a ticket for taking you, and you got.
Nice.
And it's pretty much the same now. That's exactly how it is now. Been that part of the club, and then as you grow, you obviously become an apprentice. I got a taste of going into the club early because, as one of the so-called better youngsters, if you like, they'll bring you in on school holidays. So I used to go to Ellen Road as a youngster, like sometimes Alan Smith, Jonathan Woodgate, my era. That 2 or 3 of us would go in on school holidays, and we'd join the apprentices who would change in the away team dressing room, or at Fullerton Park, the changing rooms at the top. And you'd be doing jobs with them, what they do jobs for the first team, or basically they'd make you do their jobs. And that's the first time you really got a feel of you were around the first team. That's the first time you actually feel like a footballer, if you know what I mean.
This is me.
Yeah.
And all of this prepares you quite well for 1997 against Crystal Palace, because that's a sparkling little side that you have that, you know, before your career's even begun, you're an FA Cup winner, which is...
That's one way to look at it, yeah.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It must have felt for the city, because everybody obviously wants the first team, whatever city they're attached to win. But there's a deep love of our kids are coming. There are quality kids.
Yeah.
At every club, that whisper, next generation, don't worry, the kids are brilliant. And your group was extremely good, eh? And you beat Crystal Palace in the final. But I don't know how you get to the final or what that whole thing feels like. And I also don't understand, because I don't think Alan Smith plays in the final, or I don't think he's in that group, because you and Harry Kewell are.
Yeah, I'm
as with Maybury.
I think Alan Smith was. I'm not sure. Maybe because he's a bit younger than me, Smudger, so he might.
Yeah.
I can't remember the team. Woodgate did. Kewell, Maybury. Yeah, we had a strong team, really strong team that year. And we were that strong again. We got to the semi-final again the next year without the older, because we were the first generation, we were like the first years. And without the second years, we got to the semi-final again the year after.
Paul Robinson, Alan Maybury, Jonathan Woodgate, Damien Lynch, Harry Kewell, Kevin Dixon, Tommy Narvik, Stephen McPhail could play a little bit.
What a great player.
What a foot.
What a fantastic player.
Yeah. Wesley Boyle, Matthew Jones, Lee Matthews, Stuart Gore and Alan Smith, sub.
Yeah, because he wasn't an apprentice at that time. He was a year younger than us. So Smudger was still at school. He was still a schoolboy, because we were the first years, and he was the next lot coming up. But he was that good. He got put up into the team with us. But as you say, it was a great generation to play in. We had such a strong team. Paul Harte was the manager, and he had a guy with him called Robin Ray and Eddie Gray.
Hero of mine.
Paul Harte used to put the fear of God into us with just the way that he was. With kids, he was brilliant, looking back in hindsight. But you have to toe the line with him. The jobs had to be spot on. The performance had to be spot on. Your fitness, the running, everything. In an old school way, but a modern way of thinking. But no, so with the jobs and that side of things, we lived on site, so it wasn't. He never used to let you go back to your rooms until the jobs were checked.
Yeah.
You had a gaffer. In the second years, there was a gaffer, and he was in charge of going around. One of the boys, like the captain, and he was in charge of going around checking all the jobs, making sure all the jobs were done.
So in other words, he was chief sneak.
If the jobs weren't done, no, he was the one that got it off Paul Harte. If the jobs weren't done, he'd be in the office done, and then he'd have to give it to the lads. If the jobs weren't done or anything wasn't up to scratch, then if Paul Harte came down from the offices, take cover, he knew what was coming. But it was a discipline, and he knew what a talent we had. And we had a team. We had played in the Northern Intermediate League. I remember my first year there, we lost one game that year in the league. That was it. We lost 1-0 at home to Sunderland. I still remember it to this day. At home, first game. It was about first 5 or 6 games of the season. And what used to happen is you used to play on a Saturday morning, and all our parents used to come up. And then, obviously not the Irish boys or the international boys, but our parents would take us home after the game on a Saturday, and then we'd have to be back in the digs for 8 o'clock on the Sunday night. So you got Saturday afternoon, Sunday at home and back. And we lost 1-0 at home. It wasn't a lack of effort, lack of work hard. It was just one of them things. But he didn't think that. He wasn't happy. Well, we didn't perform. Don't accept defeat. This wasn't good enough. That wasn't good enough. By the way, none of you are going home tonight. To which he opened the door and told all the parents that they can all depart because none of the lads are coming home tonight. They've got jobs to do. Sunday morning up at the training ground, running around the training ground. Hence the reason we never lost another game for the rest of the season.
So I suppose I should really ask, seriously, when you make your league debut against Chelsea, who was man of the match? Let's not mess about here. Who carried the champagne away at the end of the...
Was it?
I think we both know it was. You were ready, is what I would say, because Nigel's ribs weren't right.
Yeah.
It's Chelsea, a decent Chelsea side, a good one. You made a lovely save from Laudrup, if I remember rightly, but you're man of the match. To what extent does the formation that you've had mixed with your ability help you dominate a situation where I think you're 18 or 19, maybe 18, I can't remember. 18.
Maybe just,
And you're up against a right good side and you win man of the match and you treat it as if, I remember you saying you were nervous, but you treat it as if you were a long-time pro. The formation adds as much to that occasion, I guess, as the ability
Well,
does.
I've been training with the first team a while. I've been in and around the first team. And as you say, Nigel did his ribs, but at that time I was third choice goalkeeper. Mark Beanie was number 2. And he was obviously not match sharp because he's not played, because if Nigel's fit, he plays. And it'd been a long run of games for him. So I think midweek that week there was a reserve game, and Mark Bean said, you know what, I'll play in that, I'll get myself right, or just get myself ready for the weekend. And then he ruptured his Achilles midweek, and then all of a sudden, from me thinking, great, I'm going to be sat on the bench watching the first team Chelsea, this is a great experience for me. All of a sudden, it becomes real that there's a potentially they're going to be playing. I think they tried to get a goalkeeper in an emergency loan because I was so young at that time, because of what had happened to the two goalkeepers. But it just got to the end of the week and it was a case of, look, you're going to be playing. So it was great. I was very nervous, apprehensively looking forward to it. As you say, against a very, very good Chelsea side. Difficult day as well. I remember it was sunny, it was windy, it was raining. It was one of them days where you got all the seasons in one day. I always remember the first 5 or 10 minutes, it was a corner. I might have made a save or it had gone wide or something. Went to get the ball, Dennis Wise comes running in, picks the ball up and he goes, I'm swinging this right in on top of your head and you're going to get smashed. So you're thinking straight away, boy, here we go, this is great. Loved it, loved it.
That's definitely what you thought first thing.
Yeah, loved it.
Because not everybody reacts to Dennis or words like that.
But that's a challenge, that's a challenge thrown down to you. So straight away you're like, come on then.
Bring it on.
Yeah, I'll get this one, this is mine. But you have to be careful not to be sucked in to make bad decisions. Yeah. Because it's very, very good gamesmanship and good mind games from him. Because obviously as a youngster, he thinks, right, going to draw him out now or make him do something that he wouldn't want to do.
There'd been a tumult because the focus was on you coming in there, and you get a handful of games well in advance of your breakthrough. But what was the club like then? Because George had arrived and made Leeds really competitive, in my view. Helped nick the title off Arsenal with a big, big result at the end of the season. And I suppose Gunnar George, in Leeds, I think initially might not have been all that welcome, but he'd made the side really powerful, I thought, full of good talent as well. But there'd been a tumult all season about whether he was leaving or going, whether Martin O'Neill was coming in.
That's right, yeah, Martin O'Neill was touted for a long time.
And David O'Leary was the choice eventually of Peter Ridsdale. What was that, as an observer, what was that like?
You don't really forge an opinion as a youngster because you're kind of carried away with what's around you. You're happy to be a part of it. George Graham was a figure, somebody like Paul Harte, ruled with respect, aura, and he was a dominant figure, if you like, the aggressor, not an aggressor, but somebody who ruled with a very strong opinion. And you just, as a youngster, you have to respect that, and you don't really forge them. You're just happy to be part of the squad, training every day. And me at that age, being given my opportunity, being given my chance in the first team, whether it was for 2 games, 5 games, 10 games, whatever it was a ride that I was just happy to be on. But it was one of them at that age, it's coming to an end, so you're not disappointed for when you come out of the team. It was kind of I've done that now. It was kind of a relief when you came out.
Assimilate, start, build up again.
I've done that now. I've proved I can do that now. I'm still very, very young, but I've been in, I've done it, I've proved I can do it, which flipping forward was different the second time I went in because I got 20 odd games and I got pulled out, and then I saw my arse, spat my dummy out and wanted to leave because you think you can do it over a longer period of time. But at that time, the club, as you say, it was going through managerial transition. As I say, as a youngster, you don't really get involved with that.
Paint me some pictures then, because we've lost some of these characters a wee bit, like. So, for example, you wouldn't have dealt with him often, but Peter Ridsdale, did you deal with him? Yeah. What was he like?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I mean, he's a man who followed his dream, absolutely followed his dream, a passionate Leeds United fan. There's, you talk about the gross mismanagement, the overspending. He followed his dream. He financed that club to almost the point of ultimate glory, the European title, which he wanted to achieve. He was always on side for the players. He'd travel away with us. And he was a man who was just very, very passionate about his football club, about his managers, about his players. And we'd have European nights, we'd have away trips, we'd get a result in Europe. The manager will say, right, we'll have dinner together, we'll have a couple of glasses of wine in the bar together tonight, knock it on the head at midnight, bed, we'll have a couple of glasses of wine, a bit of a sing-song. And he was there, he was with us, and he was part of the group. I've got a lot of respect for the man. There's questions over whether it was his fault, the way that the club was grossly mismanagement, whether he was wrongly advised or however that came about. But at the time and the bubble that you're in, it was one hell of a bandwagon to be on.
That's interesting that you describe it, that bubble you're in, because a lot of clubs or a lot of groups of players wouldn't have found time for the money man being in there. it would have been hard for a non-football person to have been accepted in.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, in a lot of places, he'd have been laughed at behind his back about having, he wants to be one. And footballers are a tight clan.
It was a tight clan, but we were a wider clan because they would travel together with, like, when we went to Europe, the European nights that we experienced in the Champions League, we'd travel together on a plane. They'd charter a plane for us, but there'd be the manager, the chairman, the staff, the press. Some of the press would come with us. Then there'd be the directors, and then there'd be like a corporate trip. Leeds United had a travel company at that time, Leeds United Travel. My dad and Jonathan Woodgate's dad travelled Europe in the best style that they've ever been in. They went to every game. My dad and Woody's dad never missed a game. They'll tell you the nights in Rome, at the San Siro, different places. And that was all thanks to Ridsdale's vision and what he wanted to do for the club. And it was one big family, and it was a big extended family. And it wasn't one of these teams or clubs that the players were inaccessible. The players were always accessible. We didn't get on a private jet just for the players. There'd be a corporate trip with us behind us as well.
That matters.
All right, we may as well go through a different channel at the airport, or we don't go the same way, or we get off the plane and we get on a bus and go to the hotel. There's levels of privacy and security that a team need, but it was one big Leeds United family at that time. And as I say, it was a bandwagon that was phenomenal to be on. And you didn't realise what was going on. Nobody at that time, from a player's point of view, were thinking about finances, were thinking about money, thinking, how the hell is the club affording to do this, or why are you doing this? I mean, you were on great bonuses for Champions League, you were on bonuses per point in the Champions League, wages were good, everybody was happy. There was no kind of foresight 3 years down the line, well, what if this hits the buffers, what if this comes off the rails?
No.
There's not,
it's not your job under any stretch of the imagination.
But looking back, I don't know if it was anybody's job. I don't know if anybody had done that. Do you know what I mean? But saying about Peter Ridsdale, and I genuinely think he was a businessman, a chairman, but at heart a real supporter who followed his dream and lived his dream to almost an inch of making it.
European Cup semi-final.
Yeah, Valencia.
As every reveller who's ever had a big night says, when the consequences come home the next day, it was a hell of a ride.
Yeah.
And again, paint a little picture, if you will. Pick somebody, because I noticed that as you're coming in at first, Lucas Radebe is around.
Yeah.
People talk about him as an exceptional character. I have to ask you about the Haaland-Keane feud. Starts just before you debut. It starts around about the time that you're winning the Youth Cup against Crystal Palace. But you get to know Alfing Haaland, who has this notorious feud with Keane, whose boy now already is just about the number one exciting
He's going to be a superstar, isn't he?
striking prospect in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know about which of them, but tell us about some of the characters there. The people who stand out for you, the 18, 19, 20-year-old Paul Robinson who's like, this geezer's different.
Lucas was different. As you pointed out, Lucas, you call him the chief. He was so laid back he could fall over. Nothing fazed him. His ability to read a game. He played with so many injuries. His knees were hanging off. His ankles. He was struggling every week. But to play at the level that he did, and the ability that he had, and he was always one. There was, at that time, it was a very jovial dressing room, and there was a definite pecking order. And as a youngster, you come in and you make the teas. Back in them days, you make the teas. When you get on the team bus on the way home, you get everybody's dinner on the way home. You clean the bus on the way home.
Even as a first team player.
If you just start, you're just coming into the first team. If you're the youngest on the bus, mate, you're making cups of tea and getting the dinner in, and that's how it was. But Lucas would be one of these that, no, you're all right. I'll get it. Don't worry. Or he'd be at the back giving you a hand. Do you know? It was nothing. There was no ego, no side to him or anything. You're like, Chief, do you want a brew? He said, I'll come and do it. That kind of thing. He was just a genuinely nice man. He wasn't a stereotypical footballer, but his ability on the pitch now, looking back, was phenomenal. There was big characters in that team. I mean, the Gary Kelly is a huge character. One of my good friends, even now, Ian Harte, left back. The quality that we had in that team.
Smashing use of the ball.
Big for Dukes up front. Harry Kewell, Lee Bowyer. There was a lot of talent, but a lot of characters in that team. And then you brought the likes of Rio Ferdinand into that later on. When the club was getting stronger, the dressing room was a tough school. Jason Wilcox as well, a very big character. There was a lot of big characters fighting for status, and it was a very tough school to come into.
Then on that subject, we've got a sponsor, it's Bet365, and they want to know who's the best central defender you played behind. For all the top quality footballers.
There's a lot.
And but it's got to be a personal thing for you.
There's a lot.
Hierarchically, one may be better than the other, but for you.
I love playing with Ledley King. A lot's been made out of Ledley with his injuries and the way that he didn't train. That's not true. He did train, but he trained in a different way. He had his problems with his knees, but he would train in the gym. He'd do his rehab. If you could get him on the grass on a Thursday or Friday before a Saturday, if he trained fully during the week in and week out, he would have been a top class player. Just his ability to read the ball, to read the game, and he could play as well. I remember a couple of times Martin Yole played him in a holding midfield role, and I thought he was fantastic in that holding midfield role. The time that I spent with Ledley at Spurs and in the England setup, you could see what quality he had. But it was a really tough question. I mean, John Terry, Jonathan Woodgate, Rio Ferdinand, Sol Campbell, Lucas Radebe. Really tough selection. A lot of centre-halves to choose from. Not many bad ones in that list, to be fair.
No, and mentality unites them, because you'd say John Terry and, say, Jonathan Woodgate were different kind of footballers.
Yeah.
Probably Rio and Sol, different. Yeah. How much they liked the ball, what they wanted to do, positionally. Do they go first to the ball, or are they reading and looking after the second challenge, or whatever? But I think strength of character and winning mentality probably unites them.
Yeah, absolutely. And centre-halves have that. And obviously I've been lucky enough to play with a lot of good centre-halves, but very, very different ones. Ball-playing centre-halves, defending centre. JT was probably the ultimate put your body on the line, literally die for the cause type centre-half. Whereas Rio, he's got that in him, but he's a more elegant centre-half, quicker, gets himself out of trouble, ball plays. I think Rio was probably one of the first centre-halves, but real ball-playing centre-halves who wants to get, rather than just kick the ball down the field, wants to get on the ball and play. But no, I was fortunate. My first ever roommate was a centre-half when I was a kid, coming into the first team squad at Leeds. I roomed with David Weatherall, if you remember David Weatherall. Yeah. And I think he was a soft option to break the young lad into the team, because he was such a nice guy. Really placid, wouldn't have a bad word to say about anybody. He wouldn't go cutting my shoes up while I was asleep or playing any pranks on me. So I think it was a safe bet. But Weathers was just so straight down the middle. Like, get into the room, do you want a cup of tea? And no, I'm fine. Like lights, he'd be watching telly and then he'd turn the lights off at 9 o'clock and just say good night. And I'm laid there like a kid, like, Weathers, it's 9 o'clock, but you daren't say anything, I daren't do anything. I just remember laying there for a little while. But no, he's
quite firm on the pitch, guy. I thought.
Yeah, very good centre-half. Scored the goal for Bradford, I think, that put Leeds in the Champions League. Yeah. But no, he's another character that wasn't a stereotypical footballer, as you can see by the job he's doing now. Is it the Football Association or the Premier League, whoever he's working for? Very knowledgeable, very clever guy.
Were you a talker to your centre-halves? Did you hector them?
Yeah. Hugely believed in it. If you can handle the troops in front of you, if you can make them do their job, or if you can make them work harder, it cuts your workload down. The harder you work to pull their strings, to keep them away from your goal, the less you have to do. And footballers love an excuse, and they love a little bit of downtime, and they love a relax and a switch off. But if you're constantly in their ear and they constantly hear your voice, they just think, oh, I'll have a breather for 5 seconds. But if you're in their ear, they won't.
Why Spurs?
There was an opportunity. I can tell you the story about Spurs. They tried to sign me in January in the window when Leeds were really struggling at the time. The fire sale was gone on. Yeah. Me and Alan Smith were the last two that were there,
because they desperately needed the money.
And we were the last two of the old guard, if you like. Once all the loans had come in and the club had really fallen apart, you had players there who genuinely didn't want to fight for the cause. That were there. Agents had brought certain players in. And it was a horrible place to be. You'd come in training one day and you wouldn't know who was going to be there, who was going to be sacked. And it was at the stage where they were sacking backroom staff, laundry ladies, kit men, people like that, who were on half of what anyone else was on a week.
People who'd been part of your daily fabric, morning, how's it going?
The actual heart and soul of the club, people were getting sacked, which was a terrible thing to see, because you look at it and you see players there on tens of thousands a week that they can't get rid of. Yet they'll sack somebody who's on 10 or 15 grand a year, who's part of the club and it's their livelihood. There's just, when football clubs cut costs and cut corners like that to save money, you just don't see the logic on it, the backroom staff, the important people who earn a fraction a year of what the big stars do every week, and they've got them sat there doing nothing, which still to this day frustrates me. And you know, it's difficult when you look back at it. But Spurs came in for me in January. The year before that, I'd almost signed for Aston Villa. David O'Leary was at Aston Villa. He wanted to take me to Aston Villa. And it was just the wrong time for me. I just didn't want to go. Leeds, my team, I'd been there since I was 13. We'd stayed up the year before. We were in the Premiership again for another year. I didn't really fancy living in Birmingham at that stage of my life, at that age. And it just didn't appeal to me. It had nothing to do with finance or money or anything like that. My club, Leeds, was still in the Premier League, and I wanted to play there again. I think with blinkers on, you think, well, this can't go on for much longer.
Yeah.
The bad times. You're thinking, look, we've stayed up, everything's going to be all right. Do you know what? It's not for me. I'd rather have another year at Leeds in the Premiership than Aston Villa in the Premiership. So in hindsight, I stayed and ended up moving to Tottenham, whether it was the right thing or not to do. My time at Tottenham worked out, so it probably was. I enjoyed my time at Leeds. They came for me in January, went down to Spurs, did the medical, contract was agreed, everything was done. And at the 11th hour, they were going to loan me back to Leeds, like Spurs quite often do. But because of the problems at Leeds, and it was a transfer window and everything else, they'd taken too many players on loan. So they couldn't sell me and loan me back. So all of a sudden there became a real problem because they didn't have a goalkeeper, and Spurs wanted to sign me but I could loan me back, and the deal collapsed. So I shook hands with Daniel Levy in January on a man's word, on an honour, and he said, look, if Leeds United go down or whatever the situation is, we'll revisit the situation in the summer, we'll come back for you in the summer. And true to his word, we went down, and within a week or so, first on the phone, the deal's on, we're going to try and do the deal, we still want you, kind of thing, which was...
That's an unusual part of football, the honour.
A huge respect for Daniel Levy and the way that he conducted business that way. And John Alexander, who was the club secretary at that time, and had a great relationship with the both of them. And it was because they could see it was a difficult time for me. I was only 23, 24, I think. And it was going to be a big move for me, moving down from Yorkshire. At 23 I was, because I was at Leeds from 13 to 23, I was there 10 years. And it was going to be a big move for me, and they could see that. And with it all falling down and collapsing around me, it was strange. And then to come back I knew I was going back to Leeds, but to have the Tottenham thing taken away completely, it was odd.
Why did you trust?
I had no other option. I was going back. The contract was done, the contract was agreed, it was all there. But obviously nothing was signed because you couldn't.
You see my point, that in football that's not a normal way to proceed. And in football, although we both adore the sport, in the fringes of the industry, it's a pretty hard, ruthless, sometimes ugly.
Well, listen, I shook hands with Daniel Levy and John Alexander, not knowing whether I'd ever see him again. That's the truth of the matter. I could have gone to Leeds, gone back to Leeds, we could have stayed up, and I could have ended up staying at Leeds another year. Or Spurs might have watched me between then and the end of the season and gone, not quite what we thought he was, him, you know. Let's just forget that. It's like delete, erase, don't ever speak to him again type thing. But it was a difficult end to the season. I shipped a bag full of goals because we were poor at the time and we were getting relegated. But I was still playing well. I still played, you know, and there was obviously a potential there at that age that they could see. And as I say, it's true to their word as it was. It was a very, very quick deal. It was done very quickly because the contract was already done from the January. And it was a case of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And the move was done. You
went there Spurs as an experience for you overall was good, a trophy, lots of England exposure, you develop as a goalkeeper, but overall it was also quite a bumpy ride.
Yeah, towards the end, I loved my time at Spurs. I think I played some of my best football at Spurs.
And they love you, the Spurs fans still adore you.
Instantly got a fantastic rapport with the Spurs fans, hit it off straight away. I just think they could see my will to win. I wasn't a Spurs fan as a kid. I'm a Spurs fan now as well as a Leeds fan. I just loved my time there. There was just an instant rapport there, an understanding between the two. And yeah, it was strange because I was accepted very, very quickly. But I think my performances helped as well. I was fairly consistent in my first couple of years there. And I think they could just see my passion and will to win. It wasn't a case that I was just there to play for their club. I wanted to do everything that I could to make their club successful.
What did the first couple of years at Spurs teach you? What did you learn?
I thought it was great. It was a big step up for me. It was going to a top half Premier League club, and one traditionally that you've seen that's got a huge history of winning trophies, players, top quality players, going to London, massive stadium. And it was a real step up. I used to love going there as an away team player, the White Hart Lane. What a fantastic stadium! And it was a ride, and I was loving being on the ride. And with that came the England call up, being part of the England setup, and it was that time at Spurs. Looking at it now, looking back at it, was probably the foundations, the real first push to be where they are now. From when Martin Jol took over, I think I signed for. Well, I say I signed. I didn't. When I signed, there wasn't a manager. I signed for David Pleat, whom I still talk to today. I've got massive respect for.
He knows football inside out, loves it.
Brain. Anything you want to know about football, speak to Pleaty. I saw him last week. What a genuinely top football bloke.
Loves his Spurs.
He was director of football at Spurs, and Daniel's still got him involved now. He's still there every week.
I think Dele Alli's signing was pushed through by Pleaty. That's worked out quite nicely for them.
Pleaty signed so many players. So I signed for Pleaty.
It's funny, the people we've got in common that we really like and respect. It's a nice feeling to be hearing that. Yeah. But from Budgie to Pleat, that's a big jump.
Yeah, two very different characters. Very different characters. But no, Pleaty was director of football. And Pleaty obviously showed me the club. Look, this is what we're going to do. This is a vision. We're going to move things forward now. Change the manager. Jacques Santini's coming in. Yeah. French manager. Yeah. French national manager came in with great hope and expectation. But when I signed for Spurs, there was no manager. I signed for Pleaty and Daniel Levy.
I understand why, because effectively it was Daniel's club. He very much runs it as a fiefdom, and he's run it brilliantly. I have my criticisms about whether his attitude on winning every financial battle might now be the last hurdle that they've got to get over in order to win big. But what he's done, and take from a guy who was kind of at Rangers, when he was on the board there as part of ENIC, he was kind of laughed out of court.
Right.
And he's had several thousand last laughs because the way in which the training ground, the squad, the managerial appointments have been transformed under him.
Off the pitch, there's no club better in the world off the pitch. You look at the training ground, it's one of the world's best. The stadium is probably the world's best, the state of the art. They build an NFL franchise that they're going to build.
Put flesh on the bones, because I regularly around Spain, I'll say, from what I've seen at Spurs Training Lodge, it's the best. But
yeah.
Try and make people understand what's so different about it. Why is it the best?
Every single pitch that they've got is almost a carbon copy of the pitch that they play on at the stadium. The indoor facilities they've got, the gym that they've got, the swimming pool that they've got, the hydrojets in the swimming pool that they've got, the physio room, the physio equipment, everything. Nothing's crammed in. There's space for everything. The academy's one side, the first team at another side. They've just got the best of everything. They've got a hotel on site now, which, Jose said when he first did his press conference, stayed in a beautiful hotel with a beautiful bed and the beautiful pillows, and everything is just set up off the pitch to be the best.
Do you think Daniel's
on the pitch
attention to detail is a big part of that?
I mean, I'm very, very close friends with the grounds manager there, and I know for a fact that Daniel's attention to detail has a lot to do with that. Daniel has input into what colour flowers go up the drive. Yeah. He is absolutely Tottenham Hotspur driven. He wants the best. He wants everything to look the best. They've built a beautiful barbecue area around the back of the training ground for the players or the players and the families. Daniel did it. Daniel had everything, not purposely built. He wanted to have with his gloves on and his boots building it, but he had all the designs done. He knew what he wanted. It's treated as though it's his own back garden. As I say, he chooses the colours of the flowers up the drive, which is so refreshing.
Sort of is his garden, because he's got a macrobiotic vegetable patch for his wife. So the right macrobiotic vegetables can be grown on the training ground for her.
Yeah.
Now that's a level of detail I'm not used to.
From an owner and a chairman, he wants to provide the best. He wants to give Tottenham Hotspur the very, very best opportunity. Daniel gets a lot of bad press for the way he's tight. He doesn't spend his money, but the way that he has run that football club over the years is phenomenal. That
wouldn't be mine, because he does spend.
He does.
It's about, I think now, details. If we're talking about details, let's say a deal. We don't have to pick on one specifically, but if a deal can be done at 10% higher cost in May, rather than fighting all summer, whether it's a sale or a purchase, and the sale disrupts in August or September, or the purchase doesn't come in and misses pre-season, that 10% battle that he's won. Maybe you're better saying, okay, the 10% premium that I hate losing because I'm really good at this means that the player's in early and has an integration summer, or the sale happens quickly so that the forward planning can say, okay, this guy, I think he could fine tune that.
Daniel's clever. Daniel's very clever. Daniel was one of the first owners and chairmen to recognise that he was paying players to sit in the physio room, the treatment room. So you look at Tottenham Hotspur, you look at the contracts. Daniel was one of the first ones to structure a contract. You get X amount per week. If you play 3 games in a row, your weekly salary goes up to that. If you play 10 in a row, you go up to that. If you play a whole season, then you get that bonus. Play half a season, you get that bonus. And a lot of contracts nowadays are structured like that. You read that players are on 250 grand a week. They will not be on 250 grand a week. There you go. They'll be on a wage. Max. If you play a certain amount of games, you've got an appearance money. As you get older, players will be on a very low, not a lower wage with a huge appearance money, which is how contracts are structured. You have to earn your money now. Like with some of the contracts at Spurs with Daniel, you'd have to play 10 games, score a hat-trick, do a backflip, touch the moon, and then you get your wages. But it's to stop players that just want to sit there, take the wages, and not play.
Malingering is what that is to stop.
Because Daniel was unfortunate years before I signed. He had a lot of players, ageing players, who were sat in the physio room, not playing 10 to 15 games a year, but still having a basic salary of a very good level.
And if we're being nice about the phrase, you can become comfortable like that.
You pay to play football. That's what you pay to do. If you're in the best condition, you look after yourself. You are ready to play football, and you're not chosen. You're on the bench. That's not your fault. But if you're not doing any of that, you're injured all the time, or you're not looking after yourself. Daniel was very clever. He wasn't willing to suffer fools gladly anymore, and he structured contracts in a way where you paid very, very fairly. You paid very well. But if you're going to be paid top whack, you earn it. You have to earn it. Yeah.
Santini wasn't the right man. I don't know why, but it didn't work. And I think mutually, everybody realised pretty quickly.
Language barrier was a huge one. He didn't have a word of English, not a word, which was a very, very difficult barrier to overcome straight away.
And Joe was a man who Ferguson had interviewed and said he wouldn't appoint him because he was too fat. And he couldn't have Martin Jol around the training ground when he was on his players.
Is that right?
Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. But Fergie's on the mission. He thought, what does that body shape do as an indication to my players? Well, I'm saying to the players, this is the nick I want you in. And Martin had that interview, and then when he got the Spurs job, I felt that he was one of those who began to introduce new ideas and vocabulary, in that he'd come through a school which was slightly different from the English school. And I thought he felt modernising. I thought his brand of football was interesting, but he was also very charismatic. A lot of people found him either easy to believe or easy to follow.
Charming.
Does that picture match with...
Great man manager, fantastic man manager. In a coaching role that he was in when Santini was there, Santini's sessions would be very structured. They'd be very walking through shape, very, very little fun. But then he'd give Martin a session during the week and it'd be brilliant. And you could see his ability, you could see his session. And then you talk to Martin after a session, you say, God, that was crap, can we do a bit more? And he'd take the forwards at the other end, we'd do a shooting session, do this. And Santini would all be structured and measured and right, that's that, right, finish, now we can go in. And the lads are like, we need a bit more, we want to do a bit more. And then obviously they go to Martin and he'd put on another couple of sessions and you could just see his level of enthusiasm, his buzz for the game. I think as a person, he's just infectious. And I think he was kind of quashed in a coach's role. He is a manager, he was a manager. And he was a great link between the player and the manager at that time. But we kind of almost had two managers there because without a doubt, I suspect his ideas and what he wanted to do with that team that we had was very different to Santini, to the manager. So when he went, it was a natural progression that Martin got the job. And don't get me wrong, Chrissy Hughton was there at the time, and he was a fantastic first-team coach and has been for many, many years. And very, very surprised with the way that Chrissy crossed the line into management so quickly because he's such a nice, genuine bloke, and he's always been there for the players and he's always been on the players' side. But then to make that switch, it's been refreshing to see because there's not a lot that can do that.
If you've been tight with the players and then you've got to put a distance,
the other side,
you've got to be the leader and you've got to discipline them or drop them or whatever, or sell them. That's a big change and it's hard to do.
Make decisions, but as a coach, you never have to do that. But Martin was great. Martin's man management skills were brilliant. He was different ideas in training. Door was always open. You could always speak to him. He always came across as a confident, well-spoken, but inside you could see he was quite nervous at times. He used to smoke. He used to go in the manager's room. You could smell the smoke coming out of the room, and like 5-10 minutes after the last speech or in the dressing room, you could see he'd be in there. He'd like do a cigarette in one. He'd like stick it in his mouth, one suck and it'd be gone. He ended like eating fags. It became, when the pressure became a lot towards it. He found that difficult, I think, as management. But I think he's one of the best tactically aware and man managers that I've ever worked with.
What did he do for you as a goalkeeper? Or what was your role as far as he was concerned beyond saving things? What type of goalkeeper, what role did he want you to play?
Martin had a goalkeeper coach at the time, Hans Segers, who I think, Hansy, I'm still like good friends with him now. He's moved back to Holland. But Hansy did a lot. I had a great relationship with him at my time at Spurs. And Martin was very, very aware that he himself wasn't a goalkeeper. He didn't profess to know or want to pass on knowledge about goalkeepers, which is refreshing as a manager because there's so many managers that think they were. he employed Hans Sagers as his goalkeeper coach. If he had a problem, he'd speak to Hans or speak to me and Hans together at the same time. In his view, it was great as a goalkeeper because we got left to our own devices. Hans would be there, he would coach me, he would talk to me. If Martin had a problem, he'd talk to us both together and he would say, look, this is what I've seen. What do you think, Hans? What do you think? And it would be, he wouldn't be there saying, right, that's wrong, you don't do that, you don't do that. He would have a discussion with Hans, either one-on-one on his own or with the two of us. And it was probably an alien way, a foreign way for a manager to do that, if you like. Actually going, do you know what? That's not my area of expertise.
Cruyff did that at Barcelona. They came to him for solutions. He said, it's not my job. You sort it out.
He's probably seen something like, maybe that's something that's filtered down, filtered through. But he's got an opinion on goalkeepers. He can see when things are wrong. But he's gone, I'm not a goalkeeper. You lot are your own breed.
To any degree, were he and Hans asking you to be the 11th footballer to be the sweeper-keeper?
Not as much. It didn't really come in that much. I was always very, very good with my feet, my distribution.
Because you'd been an outfield footballer?
Probably one of the first ones to bring that side volley, the low side volley. Yep. And I could do that. And I think still to this day I've got the most assists due to the fact that I had Aaron Lennon and Jermaine Defoe on the end of it. So if I'd catch a cross or anything without looking, I knew where it was going. And that's one of the weapons that we used.
Those two must have adored the fact that you could distribute so accurately, so long and so quickly.
And then I had Berbatov as well, and Robbie Keane. So their first touches was phenomenal. Berbatov not quite so much, because if it was anywhere out of his 2 metre radius, he would just throw his arms up in the air. No,
what are you doing, keeper, you idiot? Can't you see my lace?
He was a nightmare, yeah, can't you see my lace? But if you put it 50 foot up in the air and dropped it on his lace, it wouldn't move. He was absolutely brilliant. But if he didn't fancy moving, he could make you look a real clown.
Is a player like that worth it? Because
he's top.
Such a pain in the arse.
Top player, yeah.
But so good.
Yeah, so good. Still to this day, I played with Berber for 3 seasons at Tottenham. Still to this day, I don't know whether he's shy or arrogant. It's just the way that he is. He's just quiet and just introvert. But he's such a top player. As I say, he could make you look so stupid. You kick a ball beautifully 50 yards down the pitch. But if it was 2 yards to the side of him, he didn't fancy going, throw his arms up in the air, give you abuse, make it look like a terrible kick, when actually it was right next to him. His talent was phenomenal, but as you say, work ethic was questionable. And with some of the managers where minimum requirement is maximum effort, he might not have lasted so long with some managers.
Other players felt the same as you? Or there must have been some players like, I can't see beyond him because he's brilliant. And there must have been other players like, listen, I run my bollocks off every day, and if you're not going to try...
If he's on his day and he's unplayable, he's a bit like Mark Viduka. Played with 2 of them. 2 very, very sim. Viduk's is off the field. He was a lot more of a
gregarious,
a likeable type of guy. He was very outgoing, very laid back. He'd be late for his own funeral, that bloke. He's so laid back. We did a warm down once at Leeds, and he'd just turn up. We were running around the pitches, all in our training kit. We'd been at training 2 hours, had breakfast, just gone out for a run. Viduk's turns up, pulls next to the fence, jumps over the fence in his tracksuit, just joins the back of the thing. Car keys rattling around, money rattling around, phone in his hand. Sorry I'm late, guys. And it was one of them where you just accept it, because that's just what he doesn't do it out of spite, he doesn't do it out of malicious. He was probably playing with his dogs in the garden and hadn't realised what time it was. But whereas, him and Berber are 2 very, very 2 similar players with the talent that they've got.
I swear football needs people like that.
Oh, he's brilliant.
Not the robots that we've been talking about.
Characters, absolute characters. But then again, it takes managers to manage those type of characters, because there's not many managers. Because if you go to the Dukes with a big stick and say, you were late this morning, I'll fine you 2 weeks' wages, you lose him. Whereas you go to him and say, mate, come on, do me a favour. And he'd be, I'm really sorry, it won't happen again, etc., etc. And it's how you manage these characters.
That would strike me if I was ever a manager. That would be one of my pleasures, because if the talent is there, then dealing with the personality, particularly if they're a bouncy, gregarious but hard to predict personality, that's where your skill as a man manager comes in. It'd be trying to get a tune out of a robot that would finish me.
Well, that's one of my real bugbears with the England manager's job over the years. Talk about the England managers. Why do England need the best coach in the world? What is the best coach in the world going to coach the best players in this country in 4 days to prepare for a game, or 2 weeks to prepare for a tournament? You're not. You need the best man manager. You've got 23 egos there. You need to be able to be tactically aware of how to beat an opponent, how to set a team up, and how to get 23 people on side, 11 of which are easy because you're going to pick them. The other lot,
how do you keep them lively?
Man management is the hardest part of an England manager's job.
I remember saying that, maybe even writing that, much to my embarrassment, when Kevin Keegan took over, because I thought, he's not got the tactical side, but he does have the
man management
personality.
side, yeah.
And it turned out that his lack on the tactical side was so overbearing.
You have the man management side and the tactical awareness and the ability to set your team up to beat an opponent is what's needed. You're not going to be able to coach those players in the amount of time that you've got with them.
I want to lump two together, Paul, here, because one of our socios is Juan Fernandez. And Juan writes into us, as a goalkeeper, it's inevitable that when you make a mistake, it comes at a higher cost than any other player on the pitch. What prepares you for those moments, and what generally helps you bounce back? And I want to tie that to talking about your cup final that you win, Spurs' last trophy.
Yeah.
And you're at the heart of it. But Juan makes a good point, because it's literally inevitable for every goalkeeper, as it is with every player, that there'll be errors. But there's an unfair attention, there's an unfair negative premium for a goalkeeper if a mistake, or even something that's perceived to be a mistake. So how do you cope? How do you prepare? How do you get through it?
Experience is the only thing that you can do it, I think, as a youngster. And I think when you're a youngster, you don't expect that you're going to make that many mistakes. You don't go out to make mistakes. The way I look at it now, with the hindsight that I've got and the experience I've got, if you were passing on advice to goalkeepers, mentality, you have to have a golfer's mentality. That's the only way you can look at it. You hit a bad shot and it's awful and it's terrible, it's in the water. There's no point throwing your clubs about, snapping your clubs in half, cursing and swearing, because you've got to do that. Yeah, you and me both. Because you've got to play that shot again. You look at the top class golfers in the world, they may miss a putt from 6 foot that they should have made. They won't do it again on the next shot, because they know that their next shot is more important than the one that's just gone. And as a goalkeeper, you make a mistake, unfortunately that's going to happen. You have to forget that. That's gone. Like anything in life, you cannot change what's just gone.
But that's a process. You can say that intellectually, and I'm convinced. But when you're working on your own head...
And you're on the pitch, and the worst thing you do as a goalkeeper, you go chasing the game. You go looking for something to do. So if you let one through your hands and it's a goal, you'll come for a cross that you shouldn't come for, because you think, you want to atone for your mistake. You'll come out because you want to atone for your mistake. The hard is the golfer's mentality. It's keeping a balanced, level head, making the right decisions and continually doing the correct things, because you cannot change that. I mean, the biggest mistake, well, not mistake, the thing that happened to me in my career, the Croatia game, the Gary Neville back pass. I in no way expected the backlash from that, came from it, from the press and everything else. I remember phoning the missus after the game, because we used to fly on planes back from Manchester and London, because of the northern players, the southern player divide.
Yeah.
So one time the plane would drop off in London first, then it would refuel and go back to Manchester. And we had an important game at the weekend. So I think Spurs and Chelsea, or maybe Arsenal at the time, clubbed together, got us a plane and put us on a little private plane back. I remember getting on the plane, phoning my missus before we took off. She was like really off and quiet. I'm like, is everything all right? She went, you don't realise how big this is going to be, do you? I went, well, pass me the ball back. It went over my foot. What can I do? I said, I didn't mean to do it. She went, no, you're going to get a lot from this. And I wasn't prepared for what was to follow, in the coming weeks. And that was hard. That really knocked me for probably 18 months, 2 years in total, if you look at it, confidence-wise, because everywhere you go, you're reminded of it. The ball comes back to you on a back pass. I think my first one was Aston Villa away, the first game. Every time it comes back, woo, you go back and pick the ball up from behind the goal, there's somebody reminding you of it. And every question that you face in an interview is related to that. And it's constantly on your mind as a player. You have to be so mentally strong to recover from a mistake like that. Now I could cope with it a hell of a lot better than I probably did then.
But it was a fluke. It was literally, I'd almost say, unless you were an Olympic gymnast, it's beyond your control. There's nothing you can do.
But still, people will jump on it as a mistake.
I mean, it was the turf.
It's hit the turf and got over my foot. It was Gary Neville's fault anyway. He should have passed it wide of the goal. When you're a kid, you taught to pass it wide of the goal.
Yeah.
But you can sit here and laugh about it now and in hindsight. But you're so caught up in it at the time, and the pressures and the stress that come with being England's number one. And at that time, it'd been plain sailing for me.
Yeah.
My career, apart from getting relegated with Leeds, but I was never kind of cited in that because I was loyal, played well every week, tried my hardest, never ever really made a high profile error until that point.
But I think we're agreeing that's not an error.
Well, no, it's not, but it was perceived as an error.
There's my
point. The stuff that came with it, that came crashing down on me afterwards, I wasn't ready for.
In my opinion, wasn't that like a mob mentality? I thought it was ugly because it gained unnecessary momentum.
Yeah.
Similarly, not identically, but similarly, in my point of view, to, I think it was Sanetian in '98. I was there reporting on Simeone kicking Beckham, the referee getting it wrong about maybe you give Beckham a yellow card, you don't send him off. But if he's going off, Simeone, automatic, the circular before the World Cup, red card for tackles from behind. And the mob mentality went after him when he was third in line there, because Simeone was the aggressor, should have been red carded. The referee got it wrong, but it was Beckham that... And that too, just like the Croatia away game, felt like a mob mentality to me.
And it did. And it lasted for so long for me, and it lasted a long time, and it was every week, and you were always related back to that point, and it was hard, a really tough point in my career for me. It affected my performances, and then back at Tottenham, one day Ramos then came in, who immediately when he came in, it was a similar kind of thing to Pep Guardiola and Joe Hart. He had perceived ideas of me, didn't like me as a goalkeeper for whatever reason, didn't like the way I was playing, and if he could have replaced me, if he had a top number two, he would have done. He kept putting me in and out of the team with Radek Černý. Radek Černý came in and out of the team, but whenever there was a big game like the cup final or a big league game, he put me back in, and my confidence at that point was down. It was on the floor. I remember winning the cup at Spurs, and that was probably, well, it was without doubt the highest point in my career, club career, but my confidence was probably the lowest that it's been for a long, long time, with the way that I'd been in and out of the team and the previous 18 months, 2 years leading up to that.
So was that an enjoyable day? Or is it blemished?
Yeah, it's blemished. It's looking back on it, it's one of the best moments of my career, because I used to dream of climbing the stairs at Wembley as a kid, old cliche. But my son was born in February that year. He was in hospital with bronchiolitis attached to wires, and I'd had a tough 2 years. So instead of all the party afterwards, we finished at Wembley and I went straight to the hospital. So it was kind of a double-edged sword, if you like, a really high point in my career. But you look back with the memories, the 2 years that had led up to that, and then having my son, who was, final was February, wasn't it? February 2008. He was born January the 14th, and the final was February, and he was in hospital at 6 weeks old, wired up to a machine, suffering with bronchiolitis. So there's other things that were going on at the time.
And you can't take that out of your head, no matter how big the game is.
But I was always able to do that. The pitch was kind of my little safe haven. Everything else that was going on in your life and everything that was going on around, as soon as you crossed that white line, I found that 45 minutes first half able to switch off. Going to the dressing room at half time, I'd want to check my phone, see what's going on. I'd go in at half time and get my phone, go to the toilet, pretend you're on the toilet or whatever, check the phone, see how they are, a little text or whatever else, go back over the white line again, be able to play, and then done.
But without intruding too much into your family, that little boy who's hooked up to machines then, how's his ATR dash at the moment?
Yeah, he's doing all right now. He's not too bad. He's 12, he's in the academy at Leeds, and he's in the Yorkshire Academy for cricket.
Life can be sweet sometimes.
He was born with talipes as well, club feet, so we didn't even know he was going to walk at the time. So it was a very, very tough time in my personal life and career. So to win that trophy at that time was a real high for me.
And for him too, it's a memory of this guy who'll one day be a Yorkshire all-rounder. Probably handier with the ball, but knocking a few around.
Got some great pictures of him with tubes up his nose, wide to a machine, in a tiny Spurs kit, and the cup winners medal around his neck.
That ain't a bad image.
Yeah, it's good little pictures.
Let's hope that our mutual friend of ours can bring us to happier times. But it's not an Arsenal question, but Tom Lee has sent us in a question saying, is it true you were close to joining Atleti? And how do you look back on what might have been?
There was a time, yeah. It came through my agent, I think it was at the time. I can't remember what the exact link with Atletico was, but I think it was either the first or second season at Spurs, and there was a real opportunity to go, I think. Nothing official, but the word had come through my agent that there was a possibility through a contact with the club. Nothing ever came of it, but it got to the point where I was having kind of Spanish lessons at home, thinking maybe this could happen, there was an opportunity there. And even if there isn't, I still wouldn't mind learning Spanish, because at some point in my career I would like to play abroad. That's one thing I would have loved to have done, is played abroad in my career. But when you look at the exportation of England goalkeepers, or English goalkeepers, there aren't many. You look at the foreign coaches' attitude towards English goalkeepers, Pep Guardiola with Joe Hart, one day Ramos to myself. For whatever, there's a stigma around English goalkeepers, and they don't export very well. I mean, you look at the goalkeepers now, Scott Carson went to Turkey, David James India. Other than that, I'm struggling to think of a lot of English goalkeepers of modern day times that have exported very well.
But it's something that probably should happen in order for them to expand their football vocabulary and to change and bring new ideas back. Overall, a blending, just like has happened at coaching, physiotherapy, diet, football, outfield players, the blending between England and the continent now is actually making English football better.
Staff especially, staff, managers, coaches, fitness staff, players to an extent, but still English players, there's not that many that get exported. As many as come in, if you like. You look at the ratio to ones that come in to leave, and English goalkeepers that get exported, minimum, if any.
So you didn't play abroad in the end from somebody who lives in Spain. I wish you had. But pick me one of you, because that Champions League group, I wanted to link Atleti to your experience with continental football, and for all the Europa League games you played, for the ups and downs, difficult results against PSV, Sevilla. Overall, that first exposure must have just been heaven. Barcelona, Real Madrid, winning in the Olympic Stadium in Rome against Sven-Göran Eriksson's Lazio.
That's where I got my England chance, because Sven saw me play there when I was younger, and I think I stayed in his mind from that point. That was the bandwagon, that bubble that we're talking about, the Leeds team, young, fearless, didn't really appreciate what we were doing at the time, going around Europe, getting a draw at the San Siro to qualify for the last 16, drawing 1-1 away with AC Milan, beating, as you say, beating Lazio, drawing at home, beating AC Milan at home, Barcelona. It's great at the time, and you think this is brilliant, but you don't realise the magnitude of what's going on.
Which was the big performance, the Lazio one? I don't mean Sven was our last guest, and we found him extraordinary, because he wasn't in his England manager personality, and he began to talk about Sinisa Mihajlovic. He talked about the Lazio side he'd constructed by saying, bring me Veron, Mihajlovic and Mancini to Cragnotti, the president, I'll win you the title. And you were playing Lazio at a point where they'd smashed up
they were
Italy.
A decent team, they were a good
team.
They
were a decent team, that's euphemistic. So, but which was the night that sticks with you for any reason? The noise, the passion, the smells, your own performance?
Barcelona game at home, my debut in the Champions League. I always remember one of my friends at the time, he did a video for me after the game. Do you remember one of the old black cassettes that you used to put in, slide down? And he wrote on it, and he gave it to me about 2 or 3 weeks after. Rivaldo versus Robinson, and that was his take on the game, because for me it was one of the best games that I've played. I made saves. It was just a perfect night under the lights at Ellen Road. The atmosphere was unbelievable. Playing against Barcelona, somebody who I dreamt as a kid.
Xavi, Luis Enrique, Rivaldo, Gerrard, Dutrell in goals, who Lee Bowyer somehow chipped. I don't know quite how.
Still got his shirt.
The De Boer brothers are on and on the bench, and everywhere you look, there's outstanding talent. Rivaldo was around the best player in the world.
Then. He was, in my opinion, one of the best players, if not the best player I've ever played against at that time. And I was just going through it on pure adrenaline. It was one of those nights where we were second best, but we were somehow getting a result. And for 94 minutes, it looked like we were going to beat them 1-0. And it was the highest and one of the lowest points of my career, because I knew I'd played so well and constantly in action. It was literally, I'm making a save every 10 minutes or so, and you were always involved. So it wasn't a game you could switch off. And then when the goal went in, their equaliser, 93rd, 94th minute, it was such a kick in the teeth after playing so well. You forget playing well, and you just think of that. It felt like a loss at the time. But as I say, looking back on it now, that's probably what that game probably was, give me the opportunity and the platform to build my career, because all of a sudden people took note then. It's, who's that kid? Who's that lad? He's Champions League. That's not a bad performance. Oh, he's played a few games, because the coverage wasn't as it is now. These days, and you get to see all the games, and people will look back and go, oh, played in the Premier League, made his debut at 18. It could be a goalkeeper, and that's when an opportunity, a platform then to build from there.
Viva Barcelona in that case. I'm glad they gave you one of your great nights. That's fantastic. Winding towards the end, Bet365 I've asked, and I've got a view on this, but I'm going to wait to see what you say. I've got a strong view on this, and it might be a minority one. They say to us, who should be England's number one for Euro 2020? Let's say it's going ahead. Let's ignore the threat to the tournament. What's your opinion on either who should be the three that go and who should start?
At the moment, the three that go are Pickford, Henderson and Pope.
Okay.
Pickford plays for me. Pickford plays. His international stock and his credibility at international level for what he's done with Gareth Southgate, there's no issue to drop him, in my opinion. I think he's played well. I think at times now this season at Everton he's made some bad decisions. There's goals gone in that have cost him. And reverting back to what I said earlier on in the interview about goalkeepers getting spotlight, scrutiny, they've been England's number one, a different mentality. That's something that lad's having to learn to deal with now. Mm-hmm. And people sitting there going, well, he's let 2 goals in now, should be somebody else. We do that with every England goalkeeper. Mm-hmm. I had that, David James had that, Joe Hart did that. Yeah, he's passed it, he's had it now, he can't do that anymore. We should have somebody else. The problem with the goalkeeper is there's always a goalkeeper that's going to be playing well. Jordan Pickford had that kind of ride, the same as me. Sunderland, all right, he was facing 50 shots a game. He was saving 48 of them, he's looking brilliant. Gone to Everton, played in a struggling team at the beginning of the season. Now the manager's changed, I think his form's changed, I think he's improved as well. Mm-hmm. And I don't think at international level he's done anything particularly wrong that calls for him to be changed. I think his experience, he's going to get stronger with his experiences. He's going to become a better goalkeeper for his experiences. And to go into the European Championships with Henderson, who's got no caps, and Nick Pope, who's got 2 caps, I think is a huge risk. I think the old adage, if you're not experienced, how do you get experience if you're not going to get given it? With the friendlies coming up, whether they are potentially friendlies or whether they're cancelled due to whatever's going on in the world, it'd be a time to give these goalkeepers caps, because that's another thing that we suffer as an international team. You always have a goalkeeper that's got 30 or 40 caps as your number 1. Mm-hmm. Your number 2's got a single number of caps. And if anything happens to that goalkeeper, then we are guilty of not being able to give 2, 3, 4 an opportunity to get game time. Well, Tom Heaton, for me, would be in there if he was fit. Tom Heaton would be pushing Jordan Pickford for a start in position. Wow. Because he's an outstanding goalkeeper. He's of an age where nothing phases him. He's calm. What he spreads around him to the rest of the defence. Worked with Tom for 18 months at Burnley. Very, very impressed with him on and off the field. And I think given the opportunity, if Pickford's form was to drop or there was a call to replace him, Heaton would be the one for me.
You're painting an extremely rosy picture. I don't want to say golden age, because the one that caught my eye is Henderson. I think Henderson is really special. Yeah. And therefore, if Pickford and about to experience needs to be retained as number 1, and I wasn't doubting him. My thought was, I thought Henderson's really special. Yeah. If you start giving him the chance, and Heaton's back, that's 3 really powerful minimum. Pope I haven't seen enough of, but that's 3 really powerful choices.
Pope's a really top goalkeeper.
4 top choices. Yeah. That's a great time for England goalkeepers then.
There is an abundance, well, not an abundance, but there's 4 strong goalkeepers. That
isn't bad.
Yeah, there's 4 strong goalkeepers. And as I say, Jordan Pickford is the man in possession at the moment, and I think he hasn't done enough or a lot wrong to be able to question that at international level.
We're going to finish on something that we have to ask you about, because I think the nation outside Sunderland wants Newcastle to win a trophy, because everybody just wants to see what the hell would that be like when these magical supporters get a sniff
finally get something. Yeah.
So that's one subject, and another one that's a little bit more controversial is because in my lifetime in the UK, still because I'm that much older, Leeds has been the most hated side. Yeah. But now there's a real appetite. It's like they used to say about the crowd behind the goal, they would draw the ball in. Everybody's sort of drawing Leeds into the Premier League. Yeah, wouldn't it be great? What is coming if they go up? Particularly in this gnomish, unfathomable, odd, eccentric, clever, talented manager in Marcelo Bielsa. What do you see?
He's phenomenal, what he's done. And what he does, as I say, I'm there 3 nights a week with the academy because my boy's there, and you see him, he's still there at that time of night. He's very aloof with his players, but yet he's still got an unbelievable relationship and a rapport with his players. What he demands of the players, the work that he puts in them on the training ground, what he demands on a Saturday on the pitch. A lot of players that turn around and just go, really? You ask the players and the squad that he's amassed, they'll just turn around and go, yeah, it's what he does, that's what we do, that's the Bielsa way, that's what we do. But he's got that respect by getting the results, and the players can see the effect of what he does. And Leeds have been out of the Premier League for far too long. In my opinion, the term sleeping giant is massively overused, but it's the perfect fit for that club. The supporters of that club are phenomenal, home, away. No disrespect to other teams in the Premiership, but they are bigger than probably half of the Premiership, the club that Leeds have, the support that they have. You look at other teams in the Premier League, there's Leeds, they're made for the Premier League. The Premier League needs Leeds United, but unfortunately the Championship needs Leeds United for the revenue, the games, the television, everything else. You look at the games now, no disrespect at all to anybody, Would you rather watch Man United and Bournemouth or Man United Leeds?
Leeds.
Man United Brighton, Man United Leeds, Liverpool Leeds. It just brings a whole new aspect.
What was it? Was it the FA Cup tie? Was it Leeds at Arsenal this season?
Yeah.
I think Arsenal are well in front. And the Leeds fans, it's as if they're 5-0 up.
10,000 of them there. So 7,500 of them they took in the FA Cup. I mean, they're sold out between now and the end of the season. If Ellen Road was twice as big, they'd fill it next year for the Premier League. We've got such a passionate following support. And I think genuinely supporters of other clubs as well would like Leeds back in the Premier League because there's a huge rivalry, but they can see what they've done this year, and Leeds back in the Premiership just offers so much more.
They play a brand of football that's really exciting.
That's brilliant.
It's allied to what Pep likes to play. Bielsa and he think very similarly. Is there danger that football's starting to be overtaken once again by the power and intensity merchants?
Well, Bielsa's guilty at times of having a plan A, and then when teams have found him out, there's no plan B, which when the two wide players push on, the fullbacks push on, you get one quick pass in behind, and Leeds have been exposed at times. But they've changed that. They've changed defensive shapes. Sometimes they've played three at the back. Normally he plays with four at the back. Calvin Phillips sitting in front of Ben White and Cooper, or Berardi, whoever plays with Phillips in front. But then he's played three at the back, five in midfield, and he's changed and he's adapted a little bit this year. The style of football is still the same. It's high tempo, high press, win the ball up the pitch, move the ball quickly, get attempts on goal. They're dominating games. They still don't score enough goals, in my opinion. Then they're going to need to address that if and when they're in the Premier League next year. But that brings a whole new prospect of things because you're looking at a different level of player. All of a sudden, you're looking at top level players who want to come and play for Leeds United again.
Are you suggesting to me that English football is teaching Marcelo Bielsa how to improve his act just a little bit because he's adapting?
I think he's adapted since he's been. Yeah, I think for the first time this season. Well, no, he has changed formations, but I think he's adapted in games as well. He's not afraid of changing formations in games. He can, now that Leeds are on a run at the moment, as we're talking, 5 games unbeaten, 5 clean sheets. 3 of those are 1-0 when they've dominated games, but yet he's gone, I don't need to win this by 2 or 3. I'm going to shut up shop now, change the formation, and he can see where his team are comfortable and how to get results. And I think the Championship's taught him, but probably given him an indicator of how to get results. Don't keep going bang, 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 bang the same way. Get a result. The result and the points are all that matter.
How does he cope with the Premier League? Because the Premier League itself is voracious, it's chippy, there's a degree of arrogance, we are the best. Bielsa is idiosyncratic, unusual, taciturn, hates giving interviews.
He's brilliant.
Gets provoked.
He still speaks in this country with an interpreter. Yeah, I'm sure that he doesn't speak to his players with an interpreter. At times, I'm sure he does. But I just think he's a breath of fresh air. If Leeds go up this year, there will be a huge statue of him made outside that stadium. He's so well respected, so well thought of by players, staff, everybody in the city loves him. And I'm so surprised, 1, that they managed to keep hold of him at the end of last season, and 2, that he hasn't been linked with bigger jobs. You look at, Manchester United job's been touted about, Tottenham job's been touted about, the Chelsea job at certain times was touted about. I can't understand how a manager of his calibre and the quality that he's shown already hasn't been touted for a top job.
Because football's very conservative and they look at the oddities, not the achievements, and they back away. And
but you see the way he's able to put a team out and to get a team to play for him. We
know that, but you've lived.
Listen, I'm not talking him into another job. I don't want him to go anywhere. I think he's doing a fantastic job, and I'd love to see him, get into that Premiership at the end of this year. I'd love nothing more.
Well, let's hope that prediction is correct. This has been everything that I hoped it would be and more. I hope we haven't bored you.
Absolutely
it's
not.
It's been thrilling for us.
I've got so much more to give you. We'll do another few hours if you want.
Be really careful with me when you say that. We'll do part 2 because you've got to get back to your real life at some stage.
Yeah.
I hope that we're looking at the father of a future Yorkshire all-rounder cricketer.
Thank you.
And good luck to Leeds back in the Premier League. I've got no doubt they're going up.
I hope so.
I've got some doubt about whether Marcel stays and keeps them there. But like you, he's so interesting, so frustrating sometimes.
Let's do part 2 in Barcelona. I'll come to you next time.
Part 2 in Barcelona.
Deal.